I think that was probably, to me, a bit of a turning point in my life in terms of what leadership meant. Spiritual intelligence fills an important void.
Welcome everyone to another podcast. Today we're lucky to have Ustadh Ahmet Ozturk with us. He is someone who has been in various leadership roles, and therefore he will be talking to us about leadership, what it means and what it looks like, and what qualities one should have. Now, just to give you some background, Ustadh Ahmed has been, as I mentioned, a leader in different facets of his life. And it goes back as early as primary school, where he was the school captain in his primary school. And after that, in his high school and uni days, he was part of a mosque youth committee where he had a leadership role. In the last 5 years, Ustadh Ahmed has been working at Isra, where he is leading a number of volunteer teams, but he's also leading a number of staff, being the manager of Isra Sydney. Welcome, Ustadh Ahmed.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Zulaiha. It's a pleasure to be having a conversation on this with you.
Thank you. It looks like leadership has been with you for a while, from a very early age in primary school. But can I ask you, what does leadership mean to you? It's a word that's loosely used and we hear it a lot, but what does it mean to you?
Leadership wasn't something that I looked forward to, especially early in my life when I was in primary school, but it was just put on my shoulders at the time. And then through high school, university, we all lead in different capacities, perhaps, but being at a mosque youth committee, leading a youth committee myself, which could get challenging at times. But I think I've truly understood what leadership was, perhaps when I was at uni, and when we had a group assignment where I had allocated tasks, and this assignment was worth 40% of the overall subject mark. I was trying to check in, but there was this guy who wouldn't respond much. So we met about 2 days before assignment was due, and we were like, okay, so what has everyone done? And this guy comes and he's done absolutely nothing. I was like, what? And my sister was in the same group with me as well. I've actually got very upset at that time, I remember. But then that's when I realized I could either get upset and angry about this and just, go crazy about it and cause harm, or I could take responsibility and take this task on and get it done. So I think that was probably, to me, a bit of a turning point in my life in terms of what leadership meant. I thought to myself, okay, if I am leading this group, then I need to step up and cover whatever the shortcoming is in the group. So my sister and I we went away, and I don't think we slept for 2 nights, or if we did, it was very little sleep. I remember running to the box, and it was probably like just 5 minutes before the assignment was due. We were able to hand that assignment in, and we actually ended up passing the assignment and the subject as a result. So really, like, leadership to me now is about taking responsibility. And, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us and put us in this world, and He's called us, He says, Inni ja'alun fil ardi khalifa, like, I'm going to create a khalifa, a successor, a representative on earth. Mm-hmm. So all of us, each one of us are here, and that's something that I want to talk about as well today. As people with responsibility, whether we like it or not.
Can I add, that's a good point, and I'm glad you started with that example with the university, because often when we hear about leadership or we see books on leadership, we just think, oh, I'm not a CEO of an organization, I'm not a manager, I'm not the prime minister, so that's not applicable to me. But the message I'm getting from you is that we all have some type of leadership role, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, like I always remember the hadith, كلكم راع وكلكم مسؤول عن رعيته. The Prophet says, every one of you is a shepherd and every one of you is responsible with his or her flock. So we all inherently have this responsibility, and hence we are all leaders in different ways. Whether it's about leading our own bodies and making sure that our bodies are intact, sound, healthy, or whether it's about leading a group of people around us, leading in our family, leading in our work environment, leading in a community organization. there's so many ways that I'm sure each one of us, when we were to start thinking that, hey, I actually do qualify as a leader, and I think that's important, because leadership is really a mindset. Like, if you don't enter this mindset of leadership, then you're not going to take the responsibility on board, and you're going to be a reactive person. And I don't think a Muslim should be a reactive person. A Muslim is one who is proactive and doesn't just react to what's happening around them, but constantly is on top of his or her game, and trying to take the responsibility and contribute in different ways that he or she could.
I really like your point about even being a leader of your body, because I that's something I've thought about often as well, because at the end of the day, you have to be the leader of your organs. For example, what your eyes do, what your ears listen to, what your tongue says. Again, I guess if you have that take responsibility, you take that on that responsibility. That really means then that you're going to be more on guard in a good way about what you say, what you do, and so forth. But yes, everyone has some type of leadership at the end of the day. I wanted to move now to the point about, there's a lot of leadership models out there. There's a lot of literature on leadership, but also, there's a lot of literature about leadership from an Islamic perspective. How do you see Islamic principles linking in with all the discussions about leadership?
That's actually something that I've struggled with, to be honest, and I've been still, trying to work through. I like reading on leadership. There's a lot of self-help books out there. I'm still, buying books. I'm still reading some articles, especially, Harvard Business Review, which I find very beneficial. And I see that there is a lot of overlap, because ultimately, I always say this whenever I'm delivering a leadership course. I say to the brothers and sisters, I go, look, the first thing that you do is you read the seerah of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Because if we don't understand, especially the seerah, yes, the Quran as well, but the Quran is a bit harder to decipher sometimes. But the seerah, the life of the Prophet ﷺ, stands there for us to all learn and imitate. So I really see the seerah as the map. Like, how you have these puzzles, like my son, my little son, is about 4 years old now. He's got these puzzles where you fit them into different boxes, or sometimes you've got these triangles where you put you thread a triangle through. So I see the seerah process as that framework, right? So anything I feel that we build on from self-help, person development, etc., should really fall in through those holes and gaps, or fit in those puzzles. So I see a lot of it as overlapping, to be honest. Like, there's things about servant leadership, situational leadership. So these are all in the literature, which are well researched, and there's empirical evidence to the to the importance of these concepts. The qualities of leaders that you see that there's again a big overlap. But then there are things that we need to stop and question. Like, I see, for example, a lot of youth, they read like Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules of Life. I think that's what it was called.
Yeah, I started reading that.
Okay. So it's not just youth,
it.
but yeah. I mean, there's a lot of good things in there, but then there are things where, like, when I sit down with people and I start unpacking, they might not be very Islamic, and before we know, we start making these practices that that we embody. Unfortunately, I think one practice that a person was talking to me about was, make yourself so that people desire your company, or don't respond to them quickly, don't respond to their messages, etc. You could be a busy person, you could have things to do, etc. But then, just so that you look more desirable or you look busy, etc., to do these things is not really sincere, is it? So
There's
to
no
me, it doesn't,
pretending happening.
yeah, exactly. So it doesn't really fall in through that sincerity box of the
Mm.
Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So these are the things which I believe we need to really question, and you can't do that without really understanding the seerah.
How do you, okay, while you've got me on that topic, then what do you think of the saying fake it until you make it? That doesn't sound very sincere too, then. Would you have an issue with that?
I do if it's done with the wrong intention. I
Mm.
really think intention is what matters in this case, because why are you faking it until you make it? Yes, like let's say let's take example of our salat. It's very hard to pray salat in its proper way. The Quran says iqamus salah, right? To establish the prayer, but to feel that khushu, that tranquility, the concentration becomes very difficult. So you continue to, perhaps I'm not going to say fake it, but at least pray it until you establish it, right?
Yeah.
So, and that
Okay.
could be with other things as well, but things like humility, for example, which is I find is a very important leadership quality. You shouldn't fake humility. Like humility should come just organically. It should be part of who you are. And it's really ugly actually when someone, or really cunning
Okay.
when someone is faking humility. So it should just come naturally. So I think it's got
I
a
guess,
place, but as long as it's done out of a place of sincerity, to be honest.
yeah. I guess some things you would need to, for example, if you're a leader and you're expected to look after crises, and when the crisis happens, if you panic and you're like, I don't know what I need to do and so forth, everyone else around you panics. So you might be panicking inside, but you try to take command of the situation as
Yeah.
best as you can. But as you said, like something like humility, pretending you're humble, yeah, that doesn't quite
Mm.
work. So it probably
Well,
depends what it is.
there's actually research on that as well, Dr. Zuleha. Like, for example, as a leader, your likelihood of being successful is more when you are vulnerable with the people
Honorable.
around you.
Mm.
So, like when you admit that you don't know something, or
Mm.
like you can't do something, or you're struggling with something, there was actually an article on this that I had read recently. The people around you, they see your sincerity and they actually come to your help instead of abandoning you as a leader in your position. There's probably two sides to the argument, but I feel as a person, I've tried to establish this in my life, where I try to be open and sincere with what I do, instead of faking it until making it.
You're right, but I guess people need to have confidence in your leadership as well, don't they? So it is a balance. It's finding that balance where you don't pretend that you have the answers to everything, but at the same time, I guess with every single scenario, you're not like, oh, what do I do now? Please tell me what I need to do. So it's finding that balance, isn't it?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, you need to have established a level of trust in people. Like,
People.
it's not like every single case that you say, I don't know what to do. There were times at Israel, like I'm just sitting down, I'm disappointed, let's say, or I'm just feeling down that things aren't working out. And honestly, when people around me see that, they realize, they see my vulnerability at that point, and
Mm.
they become very proactive all of a sudden. And we've put through projects and programs, alhamdulillah, through that teamwork. I was just open to people, and they came to help, alhamdulillah.
That's true. There's that navigating those dynamics. I can resonate with that too. There are times when it's like, this is the situation. What do we do? And it's amazing. It's empowering the team as well, because sometimes you get some brilliant ideas that come through when you put forward that you don't really know the answers to a situation, or you're not sure how to move forward. And when you've got 5 or 6, amazing people around you putting forward ideas, I guess that's the blessing of having that shura, that consultation, because what they say, 2 heads is better than 1. So 5,
Yeah,
6 heads is definitely better than 1.
yeah. I truly believe that, like, a leader is someone who leads others, right? So this means that you don't only inspire them, but you inspire them to take action. That's what's important, in my opinion. So if people are taking action as a result of whatever you are doing in the vision, that like the collective vision and purpose that you have, I think as a leader, you've achieved an important outcome and you're doing your part. So sometimes it could be through confidence that people have in you that you show. Sometimes it could be vulnerability that, in the situation that might be the case. If it's moving people, then I think that's what needs to be done in that situation.
True.
Yeah.
Talking about, okay, leadership and qualities, what would you say are the 3 most important qualities that a leader should have?
I would say spiritual intelligence, and I'll expand on that. It might be the first time that some people will be hearing this term. Resilience, I would probably say, as a second, and humility as a third. There's lots of literature on this. There's lots of research. R&D companies spend thousands and thousands of dollars analyzing these CEOs and the successful people, what qualities they have. I'm sure there's a lot of people who could be sitting there thinking, "Oh no, I don't agree with that. No problems at all." I'm just, kind of taking it from my angle. So, but
Got 2 decades of experience, so we'll listen to what you've got to say based on your experience.
let me start with spiritual intelligence. In World War One, there was this concept that was introduced, intelligence quotient, which we call IQ nowadays. And through that test that was developed, the American Army conscripted about 2 million soldiers, right? And so they were testing their intelligence. And then came, so they thought that was a good measure of success. And then came what we call EQ, emotional intelligence. And Daniel Goleman is quite famous for his work in that area. And he starts talking about, rather than just our intelligence quotient, he starts talking about our emotions as well. So one's ability to manage his or her own emotions, but also manage other people's emotions too, and making that emotional connection with people to inspire them, to lead them. And today, this emotional intelligence has become very well known. It's studied and taught in universities, leadership courses, and has a very profound place. But there is a spiritual intelligence as well that's been developed recently as a third way of measuring the likelihood of someone succeeding. And I found it very meaningful because to me, as a Muslim, as a practicing person, emotional intelligence, I always felt that it was lacking something. Like, yes, it's about understanding emotions, managing emotions. But the issue is you could be using emotional intelligence to manipulate people as well. Like if you have mastered emotion management, you could abuse and exploit people's emotions to achieve an outcome that you want, right? So
it doesn't have a moral compass in a way, or it may not, you're saying.
That's right. Yeah. So I'm not saying that it's a bad way. It's not. But I don't think it's the full picture that we need as Muslims, right? So we know that, like for example, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like which starts with the physiological needs, then there's the safety and security. There's love. There's self-esteem, and then at the top he puts self-actualization. Which is great as well, like to understand the human needs and the success and so forth. But again, like all these models to me, they lack something because it could always come back to the self, right? Which like what self-actualization? It's to realize my goals and my dreams in life, which is great. I've got nothing against that personally. We should work hard and try to achieve what we want in life. But then as Muslims, is that it for us? Like, is that what we're here for? Is that what leadership means to us? So I think this spiritual intelligence fills an important void. And it's like a combination of many things, many other traits, to be honest, at the same time. It's really about directing oneself and others towards a shared purpose. So that purpose is just beyond the purpose of someone. I've always thought to myself, how do I keep my sincerity in my leadership? Right? How do I know that I'm truly leading for the sake of Allah? And And I thought to myself, okay, the only way that I can do it is it needs to be beyond myself. There needs to be a shared purpose with other people. And if I'm growing in that regard, and if my growth is helping that shared purpose, then I feel that, okay, this, inshallah, is sincere, right? So the spiritual intelligence in that sense is it really creates meaning and purpose for people, and it directs people towards that purpose. And it, and and the research has also shown that as well, like that self-actualization, actually, that Maslow's the triangle, as it's also called, at the top is self-actualization, because it's about the purpose of a person, the dream of a person, and that person achieving that, right? So that's what spiritual intelligence does, really. But it builds a shared dream for people. It builds a shared purpose for people, and it's metaphysical. It's beyond the material. And actually, the research also shows that like employees are motivated by, let's say, wages, by certain incentives, etc., to a certain point. After
Yes.
that, if you really want to make the most of an employee, I'm using corporate words here, please excuse me, then you have to actually tap into their dreams, their purpose, and they need to align their purpose with your organization's purpose. And that's when they truly reach their potential as an employee. So I think spiritual intelligence in that sense is the key, in my opinion, in leadership, because it stops the person from using his or her authority position to exploit others. And from an Islamic point of view, I do think that this is the most important aspect of leadership, that a leader doesn't use it for his or her own benefit. Yes, sorry.
Okay. So I guess there's self-accountability, but also the purpose is beyond the self, which means I guess it does create humility, because it's not just about you, what I do, what I achieve, which can really help, I suppose, with some of the, what we call the spiritual diseases of the heart, where the arrogance and the pride that can come in because it's beyond you. So I can definitely see, definitely I can see the benefits of having spiritual intelligence. I'm just conscious of the time. Maybe the other
Okay.
two, if you tell us quickly,
No
and
worries.
then
Okay.
I want to finish off with my last question.
No problem. And so the other two is resilience and humility. I find that resilience is very important, because the leaders, they have the hardest job in the world. They're always, like, even though from outside it's all glory and it's all prestige, it really isn't the case when you're sitting in the position. Being a leader, alhamdulillah, has helped me understand other leaders, and you start to understand how much resilience is needed when you're in the position, because you're always struggling with people, you're always struggling with tasks, and at the top sometimes it becomes lonely. You got to make hard decisions. You make decisions which people come to you and they disagree with. So you're always in a constant battle, whether it's with your nafs, the things that I've just talked about, spiritual intelligence, whether it's with timelines, whether it's with people. So you always need to have the resilience, and you fall many, many times, and you just got to be able to get up again and just keep going. The third aspect is humility. Leaders can, I think, quite frequently fall into, whether it's arrogance, even though they might not show it to the public, to the people, this self-pride, which sometimes can be hidden, is a big disease, I think, for leaders. So humility, just making sure that you keep humble despite your achievements. And I think the scholars, a scholar that I particularly like listening to, he always says the achievements are from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The moment you start attributing these achievements to yourself is when you really are on a decline. And the surah, the surah إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحُ, the Quran talks about when the Prophet is actually opening Mecca, conquering Mecca, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking him to فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ, like to glorify him and to ask for forgiveness from him. At the peak of glory, you're asking for forgiveness.
Yeah, I guess no, that's a good point, because when you're in a position of leadership, the nerves can easily get to you, because you have, all these people potentially reporting to you. So there's this sense of power. And also, when something goes well, they often attribute it to the leader. I guess the leader is taking a lot of responsibility, but they do receive a lot of, I guess, compliments and recognition, and they're at the forefront. They're in the limelight, so it's really important to keep check of one's nafs, so that you don't think this happened because of me. This achievement is because of all my hard work. Because we all know there's sometimes situations where we put in hard work and we get zero outcome. We have to remember that it's not just
Yeah,
our efforts.
and there were prophets who came and who had no following, who only had a few following. So good to keep those in mind. I think I've touched on this already, but the most important thing to do, in my opinion, at the start is to really familiarize yourself with the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Like at least read one seerah or listen to one of, like, there's very good series out there in English that talk about the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Maybe read one or two books. Like, for example, I've got this book, Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, 11 Leadership Qualities That Change the World by Nabil Al-Azami, who's well researched in the Western, let's say, understanding of leadership, but also he's well based in Islamic understanding as well. I would say maybe read a book or two on things like this, and then the person can delve into some of these self-help books. Harvard Business Review has, I think, very good articles. I'm personally subscribed to that, and I try to read it. But start somewhere. Once you've established your foundations, then slowly start picking up. Perhaps start with articles that you like and you might be interested in. And if you enjoy reading those articles, they usually come with books that they talk about. You can also dive into those books as well, and continue your journey from there.
Great advice. Thank you for that. I guess there's so much out there, literature, but I like that you said identify one or two at a time and just go through those, and we can learn so much. Thank you for your time, Ustadh Ahmed. Appreciate your valuable input and advice. And inshallah, may Allah make it easy for all our leaders in all that they do. And see you next time.
No worries. Thank you for having me.